Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more moments before we get started. We have about 65 people registered for today's session, and I just want to be sure that we've got enough people join before we get started. So I am going to go back on mute for just a few more moments, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kendria Mitchell, and I am a project manager here at Benefitsolver. I'm very excited to roll out the first of the monthly training sessions for you guys here today. I do have a couple of just housekeeping items before we get started. So there is a questions box that's part of the GoToWebinar. If throughout the session you guys are unable to hear, need us to slow down, have any additional questions, feel free to pop those over in the questions box, and I will get back to you with a response as soon as I can. We'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end for any Q&As that I was unable to get to during the course of the training. Not to put anyone on the spot, but we have such a small group today. There's one attendee who I am going to pop a chat over to, registered under the name Mala. We've been looking for your employer email address for quite some time, and so seeing you on today's session just made me want to reach out. So you'll see a chat come from me here shortly so that we can attempt to collect your employee address to get your user access set up accordingly so that you can really get into the trainings. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. 1 second to pop another document over on the screen. So today's training session is geared specifically to our monthly employer groups. And the reason that we wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to you guys specifically is because your guys' information is going to get into our system a little bit differently than everyone else's. So before I turn the training over to Dave and Pawn, we just kind of wanted to level set that expectation for you guys. Understanding that, we are catering this session specifically to you as a monthly employer. And that's mainly because, again, the way that you are going to get data into our system is a little bit different than those employers who are on the biweekly side and who see data through the enterprise data warehouse. So we're happy to have a smaller group here today, again, so that we can really focus on you guys. And so I just want to share a spreadsheet. So we've categorized the monthly employers, down by your employer size, and how we're going to get your data into the system. And so if you're one of these larger employers, so Rutgers, University Hospital, Rowan, Montclair, you've already heard from me. We've had our discussions on how we're going to start getting your data. If you're from one of our medium-sized employers, so College of New Jersey, Stockton, NJIT, William Patterson, Keene, and the City State University, you most likely heard from me today, and we're working to get a meeting scheduled with you guys accordingly this week. And then if you are one of the smaller employers, so Ramapo, Thomas Edison, Palisades, Military and Vet, and Building Authorities, you guys will hear from me following this call, and we'll be looking to get calls scheduled with you all for next week. One last thing before I turn over to Dave is just to point you all to the Document Center. So as, again, individual employers, we just kind of wanted to let you know that we have created individual folders out here on our Document Center for you. You'll find your employer name. If you are listed as the head of, that employer group, you've already been granted access to the Doc Center so that you're able to go into the folders and pull down the information accordingly. Inside the file folders, you'll find the same things, which is a copy of a file specification and a document that is called your structure groups, as well as by the end of the day today will be a third report out there, which is just a standard report that can be run out of our system to get data back into yours. All of these things will be covered when we touch base with you in our kickoff meetings, but just kind of wanted to level set that expectation that if you have not heard from me, you will very shortly. I'm going to take a breath and without further ado, turn today's session over to Dave and Pawn, who are going to be the trainers.
Thank you, Kendria. Are you also giving me the control? Am I getting the control of the screen? Here we go, 1 sec. Okay, and there we go. Hey, good morning. I'm Dave P., and I'm glad to be with you today. I'm a learning and deployment consultant with Benefitsolver. I think we probably met just recently when we did our overview sessions. And today I'm joined by Pawn Johnson. Pawn, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Pawn Johnson, Director of Client Operations here. I will be on the ongoing team that supports the New Jersey team for an ongoing perspective. So you'll hear more about what I'm going to show you later on today, but looking forward to it.
Excellent. All right, let's dive in. So Kendria had already given you a quick peek at how you can get data into the system. And there's really two ways you can do it. What she had mentioned was you'll be able to go into the Document Center. That's under Administration Doc Center. Find your appropriate folder. They've all got the setup. And you'll be able to come in and find the specifications for import file that you can use. Now, this is like an Excel spreadsheet kind of layout where you'd populate the file, post it to the Doc Center, and then we'll get that data imported into the system. That's the fancy way of doing it. And it's set up, regardless of the size of the employer group, it's set up so that you can leverage that. So if you theoretically had one person that you wanted to get their data into the system, you could fill it out in the spreadsheet and submit that. But I'm going to show you what I would do, which is the simple, the easy way, the quick way. You got a one-off or maybe 2 or 3 or just a handful of employees that you want to load their data into the system, and you don't want to bother with the spreadsheet and uploading it and asking for help. You just want to knock it out right now. That's my way of doing things. So I'm going to show you the process for add an employee. And this is super intuitive. There's really nothing to it. You just jump in. Here's the employees menu. Now, bear in mind, as an administrator, I've got basically all the check marks. I've got all the admin right. So I might be seeing a couple menu items that you won't see, but still you'll be able to see employees. And then the first item here, add employee. The interface is so easy. It's just go down and populate the information. Same information you'd be putting if you were entering it in the spreadsheet, but here you're doing it in a vertical format. So if I had this one, I could go Roy and just put in all the information that I have. Bearing in mind those red asterisks are required fields. So I definitely need to get those in there. And I'm just going to populate some fictional information so you can see how easy this is. There you go, zip. And again, I'm just looking at the red asterisks and going to populate those. Benefit status, I'm going to make them active. Date of hire, I'm going to say this is coming up. Oh, Pon, are you on the phone? When we've done these trainings in the past, Pon has been able to show you a shortcut that is my favorite shortcut, but Pon, I got there first. Letter T gives you today's date, which is 9/15/2020. That works in any date field in the system. You can do the letter T and it'll give you today's date. Or if I wanted to say previous business day, that's letter P, and next business day is the letter N. So you can use the T for today, and you'll see Pon, when she finally gets a turn to speak, we'll show you how we use that all the time in the system. One of the themes of today's training is you're not going to believe how hard we work to save keystrokes, to save clicks. The system, we've gone to a lot of trouble to make it very efficient for you to use. So continuing on, employee status, structure group, I'm just going to pick a monthly, scroll down a bit till we get to the monthly employer groups. And I'm going to, again, in the system, you'll see I've got all the employer groups, all the different employee types and structure groups. For each administrator in the Benefitsolver platform, you'll only be seeing the structure groups is what we call them, but these employer groups and employee types that you have the rights to. It's a rules-based platform. Your administrator rights are configured so that you'll be seeing the stuff that is relevant for you, the employees and their information that you're supposed to see. You won't be seeing stuff you're not supposed to see. So I'm just going to go. So what I'm saying is it's a little different for me because I'm seeing all the everything. I'm going to look for my full-time employee. There it is. And compensation, I'll just pick a kind of neutral number. And of course, a monthly employee. Now, having entered all of the fields with red asterisks, here at the bottom, I've got three options: done, add another employee, employee data. They're just what you would think. Done, of course, means I just had one guy to enter and there he is. I've entered that data. The middle button is add another employee. If I had 2, 3, 4 employees, I was just going to do back to back. Add another employee, enters this employee record into the database, takes me back to the top of this page with all the fields blank so that I can key in the second one. Again, we worked really hard to save an extra click. So you can go right to the top of the page. And then the third button, employee data. If I needed to both enter this employee and walk through and make some election or do some work on the employee record that I have just created, I would click employee data. And that would take me into the screen where I would begin editing the member record. But I'm satisfied with this, so I'm just going to click done. That'll take me back to the home page. And I love this feature. Another way we've made the system really efficient is, even though I just added Roy's easy test, it already knows that's an employee that I'm working on today. So for the rest of today, it's going to remember everybody that I've worked on their member record, and I can just jump straight to Roy's easy test here in the system. Okay, that's add an employee. That's an alternative to doing the upload. So you can really do either method that you want. You can go into the Administration Doc Center, get that template, the format of the file, and create a spreadsheet, load it to Doc Center, and we'll get that entered into the database. If you got 50, 60, new hires that you want to get in, maybe that's definitely going to be the way to go. But if you got onesie, twosie, three people, hey, why not just go employees, add employee, key those in, and when you hit done, boom, that data's in the system. All right, Pon, I'm going to invite you back in. That's how we're getting monthly employees into the system. 2 methods. I think you're going to love mine, the keying them in. Pon's going to tackle the next topic, and so Kendria, if you want to switch presenters over, Pon, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. So hopefully you all can see my screen now.
I see it.
Perfect. All right, so as Dave mentioned, now you have employees into the system. Now what to do with them and what to do with your day, right? So this is the home screen, and what we like to call it sometimes is like our morning newspaper or our email system is this activity and message center. So when I come into the office every single day, I pull up my email first and I start there and determine what do I need to start with my day with and kind of plan my day accordingly from there outside of meetings and such. So the activity and message center is kind of that for Benefitsolver. So as you log in here every single day or multiple times during the day, you'll come and see the activity that's presented towards you. So this tells me the work that I'm going to need to do for today. So you can see there's some red bubbles and with numbers on it. So it's very similar to probably what you've seen with icons on your mobile phone. When you have apps on there, you'll get some notifications. So it lets you know that you have some things that you need to work on. And while there's others, there's nothing. So there's not necessarily anything I need to work on or look at. So I know that's where I need to start my day. So to give you a little brief overview of what each of these icons are and what they mean to you, I'll just start off with your action needed. So right now, I have no action needed, meaning these are cases, which Dave will go over more in depth in a later time, but these are cases that are assigned to me. So maybe Dave was working on a member, which he loves to work on, and assign cases to me. He'll work on a member and says, hey, Pon, can you take a look at this person because they need to have X, Y, Z done. So when he's doing that and assigning the case for me to be worked, I will get a notification via email that I've received a case. And then I'll also get that little icon with a number, depending upon how many cases I get assigned, we'll have that on there. And then my cases. So these are cases that I have created in the system and may have assigned to someone else. So they're currently in an open status. So if I've assigned Dave a case and it's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard back, I can actually go back here, look at those cases and say, oh, it's still sitting with Dave. I see he hasn't completed it yet. So then I can follow up with him on there. So it's easily trackable for me for those cases that I've created where there's action items due for someone else. And then the inbox here, I'll come back to this one in a little bit and talk more in depth and go into that one specifically. And then there's pending and pending verifications. So these are things that, according to what I have access to, so Dave's talked a lot about this, as there's restrictions and depending upon what you should have access to within Benefitsolver, who you can and what you can see within the system. So it's letting me know that based upon the population that I can see, that I have 4 individuals that are in a pending verification status. So that means these individuals have gone into the system, processed an enrollment, whether it be a new hire, annual enrollment, life event, whatever it may be. These are all fictitious people. So they've gone into the system and did an enrollment, and now it is with me to do verification on. Maybe I've received documentation, maybe I haven't, but this lets me know how many are actually out there that are needing verification approval. And then the other thing I'll point out is this in progress folder. So this is all those individuals that may have started a transaction but have not completed. So if you remember back in the overview training, Dave went through an employee experience, and at the end of that experience, you would have received a confirmation number. So these individuals that are sitting out in the in progress folder, they've not received that confirmation number because maybe they got sidetracked, or maybe it was even Dave that was processing a transaction and didn't get to complete it. So it'll sit in this in progress transaction. So these in progress transactions aren't necessarily ones that I've done, but it's individuals that within the system that I have access to that I can see that transactions have started but not yet completed. sometimes you'll get questions about individuals that maybe come to you and say, I've completed a transaction, but I haven't seen anything on there yet. My first indication is, are they in an in-progress state? Maybe they thought they finished it and they got sidetracked, and I would check there first. And if I see a transaction that's in progress, it means that it was not completed, it's not been sent to any carriers. If there's verification that's needed, they've not received any notifications on that, and they truly have not processed a transaction within the system yet. So just some key things to notice about this. And I would say we get this question a lot of, how often should I be checking this? Luckily for the action needed, this is the one that you will get an instant notification via email that you have something assigned to you, because this is the only time in which a case does get assigned directly to you. Otherwise, in these other scenarios, it's either from a monitoring perspective or just being assigned to someone else that you may want to track. From my cases here. So there's numerous of reasons why they're showing up, but they're not necessarily having any action for you to do yet. So the one thing I'll show you here that will require some action that you do not get a notification on would be the My Inbox. So within, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to interrupt because I'm so excited to talk about this part. Before you go into the My Inbox, I was wondering, can I give a little bit of context?
Absolutely.
Okay, just a refresher from the training session we did as an overview. At the end of the transaction I processed in the overview section, what happened was I had made an election that triggered a need for dependent verification. And then, as you may recall, I showed you all the different ways that an employee can be is able to submit their dependent verification. For example, within their message center, they got a message and they could reply to that message and attach a document. Or if they were logged in through their phone using the mobile app, they could take a picture and submit that document. So at the time that transaction happened that triggered a need for dependent verification, a couple things happened behind the scenes. One of them is the system said, oh, this person needs to submit a document. So it sent them a message that they could reply to. It told them what they needed to do and gave them a button to submit their document. It also created a case on the member record, and that case is in an action needed status to let us know that we're waiting for a document on that. Okay, so all that happened behind the scenes when we made this transaction. Pon, thanks for letting me jump in. Please continue.
Yeah, no problem. So now that the member has uploaded their documentation, what happens from there? So that's what comes into My Inbox. So if I check on here, as you guys saw, there was a 1 that was on there because I have one message that I have not read yet and not have looked at yet. So as I come into the system, these are individuals that have submitted that documentation, whether it be at the end of their transaction, or they may have had to come back later and to upload that, or via their mobile app. This is where it gets housed. And so from here, I will take a look. So Dave ZZ Test submitted his documentation. So he's given me this note here. It says, please see attached documents to verify my dependents. And then he's also provided me 2 different documents. One is for a marriage certificate, and then one's for a birth certificate. So just a reminder that documentation requirements for dependents have not changed, and the process is only changing. So you will be doing the verification of that, and that part is the only new part. But as far as the requirements goes, those aren't changing. We're just giving you a scenario here where these are 2 documentations that are being submitted for their dependents, but those requirements have not changed. So if I take a look at this again, so what I would do from my day here is coming in here, and more than likely, I have no idea what transaction Dave has processed, but I know that he's given me documentation. And if there's others within the system that has also submitted documentation, I won't know either. So more than likely, what I'll just be doing is triaging these and putting them attaching those within those cases that Dave mentioned. So there's this button up here that says attached to case. And so every single time that you do process a transaction that requires any kind of verification, as Dave mentioned, there will be a case created, and I can see that there is a case created for Dave ZZ Test. So this is a current open case, so I will want to attach those documents within that case and process that at a later time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that piece of it, And the other next thing you'll see is it's loading all the case data that's already in there. I will keep the status as action needed because I still need to process it. I'm going to actually assign this to myself. As I mentioned, I'm going to be working these cases. And then I'll keep everything the same because I will come back to it at a later time. You'll also note that there's a due date on here. And so this due date is preset based upon the requirements of how long does the member have to send the documentation in. So this is a key thing when you're cleaning up all of the verifications to see if people have or have not submitted documentation by the due date requested. So I'll go ahead and attach that. You can attach and verify if you know exactly what you need to do, but I don't, so I'm just going to attach at this point, and I would recommend that's probably what you'll be doing, is just attaching them and then going back and working it later. So remember, I'm assigning this to myself, so I know that I'm going to have action that's going to be needed. So I'll go ahead and attach that. And then I'll go back to my home screen. So that clears out that document that was attached. As you remember before, I had this little one up here that I had something to review. It's gone because now I've actually attached to that member's case, and now I can work that member's case. And now I also see that I have an action needed because I've assigned that case to myself. And somewhere in my email, I don't have it up, but somewhere within my email, I would have probably gotten a notification letting me know that. So I will open up this member's record. So if you're in the morning where you're coming in and triaging documents you've received, and then maybe you're going and doing emails or meetings, and then you come back later, you'll be able to see those within the action needed items. So you can see this is Dave's easy test, and if I'm looking at his record, I can see exactly what's pending verification. So I see that Dave actually has a spouse and a child that has needing verification. So that verification will be something that I'm looking for as far as documents goes. Do I have documentation that that substantiates that these are valid dependents, right? So that's what Dave sent me. And so if I look at his case itself, and I can see that he has a case open down here, and I can also see that there's an action needed here. If I take a look at his cases, you'll see that the documents that I brought from the message center is now attached to his record, and the documents are here. I can pull them up and I can see what the documents are. I won't do it for this training purposes, but you'll want to validate that those are valid documents that are needed to approve these dependents, right? So I've decided that yes, all the documentation that is needed and is valid is great, and so now I will go ahead and approve the transaction. So within the drop down here, we have a number of things that you can do in the system as far as what you can do with this member's record. And so one of the things you'll see here is history. And history tells me that this is what's happened on this member's record. Anything that's transpired will show up in this history. I can see within here that there is a transaction that Dave processed that's pending dependent verification. So if I click on that, I will see that there are these before and after transactions that tells me what's been completed for that transaction. And at the very bottom, you'll see verify, delete, and cancel. So obviously I'll want to verify the dependents, so I'll do the verify here. And then it will show me the two dependents that are pending verification. So I can go one by one and process them, or if there's multiple dependents, I recommend doing a do all, because then it'll just expand on each dependent's record. And then I will go to the verified status. And obviously for the scenario, I'm doing approved. Date of verification, Dave stole my thunder. It's obviously today. So I'm doing the T for today.
Sorry, fun.
No worries. And then the verification documents I received. So reminder again, we're not changing the requirements. I'm just going to click on all the acceptable documentation that was received and required to validate this dependent. And then once again, doing the same process as far as the child goes, and I'll do that, and then do the birth certificate. So I validated three key pieces of information that's always needed when you're doing verification. You know, the status in which you're doing, the date that is the verification, and then also the documentation that was received. Those are the three key pieces of information that's needed when you're going through this verification process. So making sure I've done all of that, I will come down here. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just want to reiterate because you've said this, but I know it has caused people confusion in the past that this is just an example of the documents that you're using. The requirements for dependent verification are not changing. So if you're looking at this saying, why are they using those documents for this transaction? Don't worry, this is just an example. None of the requirements are changing. We're just showing you where the buttons are.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. All right, so now I'm at this review stage. So I have all of the dependents verified. They have family coverage. I can view the details if I would like, but it's all looking as I would expect it. And now I can hit the approve button. So that approve button basically does what I would expect. And then if I go back to Dave's record, those dependents that were showing in a pending verification status are no longer there. So they are now in approved state. They're showing as covered. That red text is no longer there. So we're all good. Information can be sent to the carrier for these dependents. And as you can see, the information that I populated when processing that transaction is all showing up here. And that's exactly what I would expect, because maybe Dave gets a question from Dave's Easy Test. He can actually show that, yes, we received your information. They've all been verified. And here's the date that they've been verified. So it's very quick for Dave to do as far as a review goes, if Dave Florence was my guy that was getting a question from this individual. So we've covered 2 steps: triaging the documents that we received, processing the actual transaction so the dependents get verified. Next step is documenting what I've done. So within the case here, it's still open. So I still need to actually close out this case because I've completed it now. So if I go back to the case and expand it here, there's an add note feature here. So I will add a note here, and I will actually change this to resolve because I no longer have any other additional action I need to take, so I can close this out. I'm going to use note as my source, and then I'm just going to provide some notes on here. So just process dependents and docs were received, whatever information you'd like to put on here. So remember that this is not only for your benefit, but for anyone else's benefit that is going to come into the system. Do they understand what you're doing and what you've done? If not, this will be all for naught, right? So it's just as good as the notes that you or anyone else that puts in the system. So I will go ahead, and everything is all completed, and go ahead and hit the submit button. And then you will see that the red asterisk is gone, no longer needing for any kind of action needed because I have closed out the transaction. So now that I've closed out the transaction, so for anybody that comes into the system as an admin can see that can have access to it, the next thing is notifying the member, which in this case is Dave's Easy Test. So within this drop down, once again, I mentioned there's a lot here. As Dave mentioned, less clicks as possible. I'm all about shortcuts, so I love to do shortcuts. So the next thing I'm going to go to is documents. So instead of scrolling through to find documents, I'm just going to type it or start typing it, and then it will show me. It's a smart feature, a smart filter, so I love it. You can pretty much do smart filters all within the system, which cuts down on my time as far as searching for things. So that is one of the best inventions I think we could have done within the system. Many others, but that's one of the best ones. So within here, Dave will go through this as well, but there's other obviously documents that you can see. But what I'm needing to do is communicate back to Dave's Easy Test that his dependents have been approved. And so I will come here and do create document. And then we also have all these templates created for you, so don't feel like you need to know exactly what template name is or anything like that. We will also have documentation giving you the different document types or document names, so you won't have to worry about this. But I was on the employee record. So from the employee record, because I was creating a document from there, I don't actually have to select a member. As you can see, one of the first things it's asking you is, what member do you want this document created from? Because I was on that member record already, it knows that and won't require that from me. But if you're doing a multiple document creation for any reason, you would have to select those individuals. So from here, I've created it, I should say I've selected the document that I want. So the important is that their benefit changes have been approved. I'm going to send this via email, so I will check that. And I will go ahead and send it now. I'm not going to wait for it to run to 6 p.m. We generally like to default things for after hours just because from a system constraint perspective, we don't want to send thousands of emails at once, but this is just one email, so it's not that big of a deal. I can check the send email, and then I will hit create, and it will send that email based upon the email we have on system for Dave's ZZ test. And that email will basically let him know it's a generic template of, hey, your benefits have been approved, come back into the system to view it. So that is the last and final step. So Dave, do you want to recap those 4 steps again?
Yeah, what I love to do is just highlight the 4 steps that Pawn has shown us. And I love to emphasize how she got there, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, if I can remember how to get there, then I think I could do that. So the first step that Pawn did was she went to see the documents that had been submitted. For this, she's on her home page in the Activity and Message Center, what we call the morning newspaper. She went to the My Inbox tile, and go ahead and click into that. This is where she saw all the documents that people had submitted. And the first thing that she did, step 1, is she attached the documents to the active case. And so we call this triaging. What many people do, what we do internally, is we'll have one person, let's say in the morning, go through, and let's say there's 8 of these messages with documents attached. Typically, what we'll do is walk through each of those 8 messages one at a time, attaching the documents to the case, just like you saw Pawn do earlier. There were 2 attachments. She said attach to case. She updated the information in the case, and then boom, 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 you'd knock out all 8 of them and go get a cup of coffee. So that's typically how we would normally do it, and what we would recommend for you to do as well. The other thing you could do is attach the documents to the first case and then go do the verification on that case. Then come back and attach the documents to the second case and do the verification on the second case. You could do that, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not as efficient. And so normally we just do all the attachments first, and then we do all the verifications. Okay, so step 1 was attaching those documents to the cases. Step 2, then, she showed you how to do the verification. And there's a little nuance here. So if Pawn goes back into Dave's Easy Test, here's where we lose people a little bit, because it's not, I don't think it's totally intuitive. She went to the drop down underneath the employee name, and she went to history. And the reason she went to history is history shows us all of the transactions that have touched this member record. And from this list of all transactions, she chose the one that said verification pending. Now, she's since approved this, so there's not a verification pending on Dave's Easy Test because we just approved it. But that's how she got in. She went and found the member record, and from the drop down, she chose history. And then she found the transaction that said complete pending. Then she opened that transaction, scrolled all the way to the bottom and found the verification or verify button. And then she just followed the instructions, loading those 3 pieces of information for each of the verification needs, the date and the status and the type of document. Okay. So that was 2, was verify. So she did 4 steps. First, she attached the documents to the case, and then she did the verification. Then she went in and closed the case. So remember, the case was initially created by the system. As soon as the system saw that a transaction had happened that required dependent verification, the system created an action needed case. Then Pawn attached the documents to the case. Step 3 is to go in and resolve the case. And that's where she switched it from action needed to resolved, and she put in a note indicating I received the documents, or whatever you want it to say, and kept it assigned to herself. Once she resolves the case, then the red exclamation point goes away, and that case is resolved. The 4th step then was to notify the member, let them know the results of the verification. For this, she went to the action item again, and she started typing. When I do my demo, you're going to see the alternate. I'm going to scroll down because I don't do the typing, but she swears by doing the typing. And so she went to documents, and within documents, she clicked on create document on the right side. Now, because she's in the member record, Sarah ZZ Test, the system already knows, hey, the document we're going to create, send it to Sarah's easy test. It's a real flexible system. There's other ways to get here that you would still need to identify who you're sending messages to. If you want to do a whole group of people, you can. But because we came from the member record, the system knows the document we create, send that to Sarah's easy test. Then she selected the appropriate message and checked the boxes and did the rest of those steps. So that was really the 4 things she did. Attached the documents to the case, did the verification of the documents, then she closed the case, and then she notified the member of the results of the verification.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave, for the recap.
Yeah.
And so there are some instances where you might do the process a little bit differently. So I will talk through the next 2 would be for a birth event. We know that that's a time-sensitive situation because more than likely the member is not going to get that birth certificates in a timely fashion, or even enough to make sure that dependent gets covered. So in that process, we'll be bypassing a couple steps. So just want to go through that process first. So I have a member, Jordan ZZ Test, who did have a birth event. So one of the ways that we talked about was when you receive documentation, attach it, you're going to the member's record. Well, so from this page, this is our pending verification folder. So from this page, I can actually just go to the actual history. So remember, Dave and I were both talking about the drop down in history. I don't actually have to do that from here. I can, and I can go to view transactions and all from here. My shortcut is less clicks. My motto is really less clicks as possible. So I click on the birth and adoption event that was happening, or transaction that happened. And as you can see, this is the same information that if I went to her individual record, clicked on the history, I would actually get to see this information that's pending verification. So in this instance, like I mentioned, we're not going to wait for the documentation. We'll go ahead and approve it because it's a birth event. We'll go ahead and approve it right away, but we will be doing it slightly different because we still need the documentation, and so we don't want to close out that case. So reminder again, a little shortcut for a T that I'm doing today as the verification, so I'll verify the transaction. And then I will see it pulls in automatically the dependent that's needing to be verified. So I will process this verification. I am going to say that it's approved. I am going to say that the approval, the data verification is today, but I'm not going to do the last step, which is click on the documentation received. I've not received anything. And so from an audit perspective, when you're having to come back to this, you can quickly see those that have been processed and maybe that you've not received documentation on. So I will leave that alone, but these are the 2 key pieces that you'll need to do from a birth event in order to get the dependent approved and moved on to the carrier. So once again, I get to the summary page and the review page, and I can see that Jordan and Tristan are both approved. As far as being that transaction goes, I will fully approve this transaction. And now, if I go back to Jordan, her dependent is now showing as covered. And as you can see, the data verification is on here, the approval status is on here, but the actual documents received is not listed because I did not check that box. And one thing also that I will not do is not actually close this out because I do still want this to pend. I still do want to make sure that that I get this documentation. So Jordan still, when she went through the process of doing the event, she still received a notification, and I can see that notification within her documents that her dependent needs to be verified. So she would have still received that. So for all Jordan is aware that she still needs to verify that her dependent has been is a valid dependent, but we are going to go ahead and do that process so that carriers can get that information. So that is the caveat to the full process, is that for birth events, you will be able to do that right away. And what I would recommend is you can either keep it at this action needed status, or you can assign it to yourself so that when you're trying to keep tabs and following up with Jordan, you know that it's been assigned to you. It's really personal preference, I would say, whether or not you want to assign that specific case to yourself to monitor that way, because you'll still be able to, if I go back to the home page again, you'll still be able to run reports and know that which cases are still open as far as needing to have action needed. So For me, I like as much as possible, if I'm working in that case, maybe I'm the only certifying officer that works these. For me, I would rather just assign it to myself as opposed to potential others. But if you have multiple certifying officers within your location, you might not want to assign that specifically to yourself, and you could potentially have others that are working it as well. So if Jordan comes to you or submits it via the inbox, you'll be able to attach the record still. And just want to reiterate too, you'll still be able to, if you need to, do the attachment of the documents if they come directly to you. So going to look at Jordan's case again, let's say Jordan forgot, didn't know how to, technology challenge, whatever the case may be, and could not upload the documentation needed, but she brought it to me. And so I will scan it, and then what I can do is go ahead and attach it to this record or to this case that's open. So if I go in here and do that same process and add a note, Dave will also go through this process, but I will do the whole process here. And then there is an option to upload a file. So I would have scanned it and I can upload, and then I can close out this, this whole case as well. So there are different options that the documentation that can come to you. Just make sure that you're documenting appropriately for others that may have to see it. So that was the second piece or the second scenario that could happen. And I know you all are asking, well, what if we never receive the documentation? What do we do, right? So I will go back to my pending list, and I will take a look at Sarah, who is someone who we're going to pretend that her time has elapsed and she has not submitted the documentation. So I will go back into her record and her transaction that's pending, and still the same process. It seems weird, right? You're going to verify, but the difference here is that instead of approving, you're actually going to deny, and you're still doing the date of the transaction of the verification, which is today, and the reason for the denial. So insufficient documentation. So Sarah didn't give me her documents for Mike. I'm denying this. I'm documenting on what date I'm doing this transaction denial, and then also the reason for it. So this is obviously key, because if Sarah is to ever come back, she will want to know, well, why did you deny my dependent? And you'll have the information listed here. And so after that piece of it, it's still the same thing. You'll hit next, and you'll see now the coverage information is just Sarah only. So then I will go ahead and approve. And then once again, going back to Sarah's record, now I'll complete the transaction. So remember, for the 4-part step for the denying, I never received documentation. So now I'm processing the denial. The next step is closing out this action, this case, and closing it out, letting them or anyone know that could potentially get a field of question from Sarah. Even though the information is all within the record itself, I just still need to close this case out and make sure that people are aware that I processed it and why. So denied coverage for dependent due to not receiving docs. So then I can close that out. And there you go. And so that way, like I said, anybody that comes into her record, they'll know what happened or transpired. And lastly, we will still send a notification to Sarah, because she does need to be aware that the dependent was not approved. So once again, we have quite a few of different templates here, so you'll have them all. And this one, it says important, your dependent benefit changes are, or your benefit changes are disapproved. The other thing that I'm not going to walk through, but potentially you could be sending a note out for, is maybe you received documentation for that dependent, but the documents were blurred or they weren't very clear. You may want to send a note back out to that dependent or that member, letting them know that they need to resubmit it. So there's a template that we have. It's called Action Needed, Resubmit Documents for Verification. So then it's letting them know that, hey, we received documentation, but you need to resubmit it because it wasn't very clear. So there's a template for that. And once again, you can send the email out just following the same process there. So 3 different scenarios that I went over. We will cover, these are probably the most common scenarios you'll come across. So we'll cover all that within the documentation. So don't feel like this is something you'll have to remember forever. We will have these recordings available, but also have additional documentation. Dave, anything I missed that you want to reiterate?
You know, I thought that was fantastic. There's one thing that I do like to highlight. If you'll go back to Jordan's record, one of the things that is system functionality that can cause people a little bit of confusion is when we say pending. What we mean when we say pending, for example, on this, it had been pending verification. What we mean in terms of that election and what happens with it, when the transaction is pending, we are not sending that transaction or that dependent on the transaction. We're not sending that to the carrier. So from a carrier's perspective, we're not reporting any dependent that is still pending. So when we had this birth event and there was a new child, but we didn't have the documentation yet, what we said is we can go ahead and approve the pending part so that it will go to the carrier. In other words, that baby will go to the carrier to be insured, so it'll get covered. And then how do we know, oh, we still need to get the document? We leave the case in an action needed status. And that's how we know we're still waiting for the document. So even though we have approved the transaction so that the carrier will hear about it, we still leave the case in an action needed status so that Pon can, and like she said, assign it to herself as she typically would, and then she'll know, oh, I got to get this document in because we've already told the carrier about the baby, and so now I need to be sure I get the birth certificate or whatever required documentation.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that covers my piece of it, Dave. I'm going to send it back over to you.
Awesome. I am ready. One sec while I get it switched over. Okay. All right, and sharing. Pon, thank you so much. Man, you do that section so well. I love it. I love seeing the dependent verification, and what I love about it is really efficient. There's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not terrible, but the tools are really efficient. So once you get the hang of it and you've done the first couple, you're going to be really pleased at how quickly you're able to knock out, review the documents, do the verification, change the status of the case, and notify the employee in a matter of clicks. It's really good. I want to show you some other things that will be helpful to you as you're working in the system. So I want to go through this scenario. Suppose you have an employee situation that you need to do some research on. You want to investigate what has happened with this employee. How did we get here? What's happened in the past? Who did what and when did they do it? So you want to do some research. I want to walk through some of the tools that are available to you, and it's all under the umbrella topic of transparency. We've got incredible visibility into the member records and everything that's happened. And I want to show you some of the most valuable tools that you'll be able to use to do research on an employee record. For this, I'm going to pick Bob's Easy Test and look at his record. So I just find the member record. Let's say Bob walked in and I did a search. I brought up his member record. There's a ton of great information here that will help you to get quickly up to speed on what's going on with Bob's Easy Test. Right off the bat, there's his name, and right next to it, you see the Post-it note icon. That means he's got a case. There's a red exclamation point next to it that means it's action needed. So I can see quickly, here are the cases that have been created and are attached to Bob's Easy Test member record. What's brilliant about cases is I can go through and read these cases quickly, maybe in a matter of a minute or so tops, at least scan them and immediately get up to speed on what has happened with this member record. So if I wanted to know what's the status, I can see the enrollment notification, I can see the verification of dependents. There's a little bit of reading. I can expand these and read all of them. If Bob has reached out for help in the past, we can add a note in a case that will let all administrators know. Now, these cases are only visible to administrators. Bob can't see his cases, but that will let other administrators know, oh, this is the interaction I had with this employee. So for every interaction that affects a member, we like there to be a case. And the beauty of a case is it's in a common area. Again, you're only seeing the employee records that you have the rights to see. So you're not seeing everybody, but for your area and the people that you are working with, you'll be able to see the history of the member record, and you'll be able to see the cases that everyone has left. So you don't have information in one person's employee email. You don't have information on a Post-it note on their monitor. You don't have information locked away in their head that they just remember. You can actually take a vacation and turn work over to your coworkers, because they can see all of the important information here associated with the member record. All right, that's right off the top, just the cases. Underneath that is a drop down. I'm going to highlight a couple of these more common ones that get used like every day within the drop down. If you were going to change a member record and make some edit to it, you would use the first menu item here, edit term. Underneath that is the history. If you were doing research into what has gone on with this employee, you'd go to the history. And also, as you just saw Pon demonstrate, when you're doing dependent verification and you want to go see the transaction that's pending dependent verification, you can find it through history. So that's two different reasons you might go to the history menu item. Underneath that is benefit summary. This one's huge. Each employee has access to their benefit summary. So when Bob's Easy Test logs into the platform or through his mobile app, he's able to see his benefit summary. You can see it too. And the reason this is so important is there are so many times that benefit summary is the answer to the question they're asking. What are my benefits right now? I think I enrolled in benefits, but I'm not sure I got it done. Am I eligible for this? Am I enrolled in that? You can check the official, here's what you got, by going to the benefit summary. Here's your information about you. And again, the employee can see all this information. Here, he's got pending approval and current transactions. This is what you got. So anytime there's a question that the employee wants to know, what are my elections, show them their benefit summary, or better yet, show them how they can find the benefit summary themselves within the platform. Now, during annual enrollment, after they have made their elections for the new plan year, there will be a second benefit summary here. This one will still be here, but underneath that will be 2021 annual enrollment benefit summary. And that will be specifically showing them what elections they've made for the upcoming plan year. Okay, a lot of good stuff here. You saw the documents that we showed you how to create document. I'm just going to show you documents in general. Documents have every communication that we have sent to the employee. We keep an electronic copy of it here under the member record in documents. So if we send them a verification initial email, it's here. If we send them a follow-up resubmit notice, it's here. If we notify them about the status of their case, it's here. If there's any document that we send by email, but we can send messages by text. If we're going to send them to the Benefits Message Center, if we're going to send them a snail mail paper copy, you're going to have an electronic copy of that communication here in documents. So if it comes back, if Bob comes back to me and says, hey, I never got such and such a notice, you can come to the documents on the member record and say, oh, well, I see that it was sent on Tuesday, September 15th. Here's what it looks like. I can send it to your email right now because I've got an electronic copy, or if you want, I'll send it to the printer so that you can have one. And also the employee can go out and find it, because everything that we send to them, we also send to their benefits message center, so they can also find these documents. Okay, back to Bob. And the drop down, we saw documents. That's what I wanted to cover. Okay, a lot of good stuff in there. Moving down the page, check this out. I don't know if you can see this is shaded in blue. Sometimes that won't come through, but this one says new hire enrollment is available through. When there is a window of opportunity to enroll in benefits, we post that in a shaded text box right here underneath the member name and action dropdown. So if it's a new hire enrollment window, or a newly eligible enrollment window, or an annual enrollment window, we post that right here, and we tell you how long it's going to be open. This is so great for questions that an employee comes in and asks, well, how long do I have to make my election? Just by calling up the member record, you can see at a glance how long they have, if they're in a window, if they're not in a window. So if they think that they're supposed to be in a window, but you don't have the blue box here, they're not in a window. So you may still need to do some further research on that, but this is very reliable and it's a great way to tell at a glance how long does an employee have and what windows are available to them. All right, scrolling down a little bit, we've already seen cases about how to get yourself up to speed. In a little bit, I'll show you how to create a case from scratch. But I want to continue showing you the member record first. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit farther. You'll see personal information, employment information. If you have access to compensation information, you'll see compensation information. Again, that's administrative rights. You'll see dependents. And now we get into the elections. And here I want to slow down a little bit and show you the sections, because this is so important as you're researching and trying to understand how to read a member record. You really need to pay attention to these section titles. Here's a section called Election Information Pending Approval. And underneath that, you're seeing medical, prescription drug, and if they had dental, it would show dental. And then down below that is another section that has election current. So the first section was pending approval. This one is current. And again, it has medical, prescription drug, and dental. What that is doing is it's showing you the different elections. If the transaction is approved, then these will become current. But until it's approved or denied, this is what you've got, the current. And during annual enrollment, once you have made your elections for 2021, you'll have another section called Election Information Future that will include the elections that you've got that will kick in 2021. So it's important to read your section headers to know what is the status of these elections I'm looking at, and recognize that in each section, you'll have a medical election. In each section, you may have a prescription drug and a dental election, etc. Okay. We're still talking about doing research. That's a quick overview of what you're seeing on the member record, the major sections. But I want to dive deeper into doing research, and I want to talk about how to look at history. Now, you've already seen the history menu item under the employee record. What you're seeing here is a list of every transaction that has in some way touched Bob's Easy Test member record. So it could be an import, it could be a manual transaction, it could be one done by an administrator, it could be done by the employee themselves. But any transaction that has made a change to Bob's Easy Test is going to show up in the history here. And you can see the details of each of those transactions by clicking on the transaction. So here I'm going to click on the first one, verification update. This is the most recent transaction. And what I'm going to see here, when we talk about transparency and complete access, we really mean it. There's a ton of information that you have access to just by reviewing the history of the member record. For every transaction that happens that touches a member record, you're going to be able to see when it happened, who did it, what reason for change they gave, and for every field in the database that was touched by that member record, you're going to see both the before and after values of the record. And then using the previous and next buttons, you'll be able to scroll back in time through each of those transactions. This one shows a little better. You can see the before, it was blank, and then we added the dependent, and here's the dependent information in the after column. And this is also where you would be able to see the verify button if there was a transaction pending verification. So I can just keep scrolling. If I wanted to do research, this is going to show me literally everything that has touched Bob's Easy Test member record. So I'll X out of this window. Incredible amount of data when you think about all the employees that we have in every transaction and the before and after values. There is an amazing volume of data. Sometimes it's maybe more than you want to dig through. So we've got another option for doing research. Down here, I'm going to scroll down to the current medical election. Down the right side of the page, you'll see these green circles. And if you squint and lean in, you can see that's a clock with a counterclockwise arrow going around it. This is a history button that shows you the history of this specific section. So if I wanted to see every transaction that had touched the medical election, I can click this history button. Now, Bob's Easy Test is brand new, so probably we're just going to see, oh, hey, we get 2 screens. All right, we're not going to see a ton of information, but the history buttons here will get more and more interesting as time goes on, and we have more history to show. What I can do is scroll back in time using the blue arrows on the right side and go through and see every transaction that has touched, in this case, the medical election, but it's also on all the current elections, as well as on your employment, personal, all those other sections at the top. And if I said, okay, that's interesting that he enrolled in the New Jersey Direct 2019 plan, how did that happen? Well, Pon Johnson did it. Show me the details. If I click the name of the transaction here, this should look familiar. This is that same view, the details, including before and after values of every transaction. So you can do your research either way you want. Show me every transaction through the history button, or excuse me, history menu item, or you could go to the section that you're interested in and use the history here to see those same transactions sliced and diced a different way. And as if that wasn't enough, let me show you one more thing that you can do, which is really cool. Here's a history with a date field in it. Now let's see, I'm not going to go back very far, but I'll go back to 9/1/2020 and click the green button, and that's going to set all of the fields back to whatever value they had on that date in history. Now, again, this is a fictional employee. He hasn't been in the system very long, so there's not a lot to show. But as time goes by and you're using this to do research, there are lots of instances where you might want to know, okay, on January 1st of this year, what were all the employee elections, or what were all the employee elections prior to the most recent import, prior to their employment transaction, prior to whatever. You can use that date to go back to that date in history and see what were all of their elections on that day, in this case, September 1st. All right. These are great ways to do research into the member record and some of the most common tools that you would use. I'm going to pause just for a moment to allow Pon to jump in here and tell me if I missed anything or any 2 cents worth you would add.
No, I think everything that you have was good. I think the only thing I would just say is, we talked about your population of being where you're either going to send us the census information via the spreadsheet or you're manually entering it yourself. So just a reminder there that you will be, potentially updating records on an individual basis. So not just adding information, but also, edit term, and you'll be able to edit any individual's information. So maybe you accidentally keyed something wrong, and so you'll need to update that. That's the only way that you're going to get an update. There's no reason or no need for you to send us the spreadsheet to just update that little thing. So there is this option here within, thanks Dave for going through there, through administration, and we'll have different, what we call as benefit access rules that will allow you to go in there and make those edits. And we'll have the documentation out there. We're not going to go through it individually here, but just know that as an administrator, you'll be able to do a lot of things, as well as updating employment information for a member if in case the import was incorrect for any reason, or your manual keying was incorrect for any reason. And then you'll see the history behind that, as Dave was mentioning.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Pon. I also thank you for giving me a drink break. I needed that. Okay, I want to transition a little bit into cases and talking about case notes. You've already seen them a couple times and they're really valuable. We use them all the time for dependent verification. Excuse me, I'm trying to get this out of my way. We use them all the time for dependent verification, and they're fantastic in that way. But as I was bragging about earlier, they're not just for dependent verification. you can use them for any need. If you have a document that you've received, whether it's dependent verification or some other document, and you don't want to just put it in a file folder in your desk, but you want to have it available, associated with the member record within the platform, you can create your own case and attach that, an electronic copy of that document to the case. And then it will be available through the system to administrators who have access to that employee. Or Bob's Easy Test walks in and we have a conversation and he asks a question, I answer that question. Hey, create a case on that. Include that in the include that in the employee record so that other administrators will be able to reference. And if Bob comes back later and you're on vacation and he says, well, Dave told me this, you'll be able to see the case notes and you'll be able to get up to speed and say, oh, well, according to his notes, here's what he was saying, or whatever use you need. When you're looking at the member record and you want to create a case, you can come over here to the right side and click on the briefcase icon. That engages the slider widget. We call it a slider widget because it slides in and off the page. And what's brilliant about this is when you begin creating a member record, I'm just going to do a manual enrollment, you'll see that the data persists here within the case for an hour. I love it. And you'll find this so useful if you're creating a case while also doing some research and want to be able to use your computer to do that research. It's great because you can just slide that out of the way and continue doing your research. And when you find the thing that you needed to know and you open up that, it remembers for an hour the case information that you've already entered. This is fantastic. So convenient. Use the slider widget as you're creating cases. The first section was reason disposition. There's a lot of different dispositions in here. Find the one that best fits your need. I had just chosen right off the top enrollment, manual enrollment, whatever it is. We use this to identify trends. If we find that people are coming in with the same problem and we're creating the same case over and over and over again, that's something we can investigate and find out, can we make this more efficient? So there's not really system functionality driven by the reason disposition, but it's for tracking. The status, you've seen action needed that creates the red exclamation point, and you've seen resolved. Those are the two biggest ones. But there are other options here like callback needed or message center needed, resolved approval, resolved denial. I'm going to create action needed because Pawn loves it when I send her cases. So I'm going to say, you know what, Pawn, you're so busy all the time. I'm going to move up my due date to tomorrow so that this doesn't get lost, and assign to Pawn Johnson, and the originating source, I'm just going to call it note. And then I'm going to type in that she should do mine first because she's all the time so busy. Excuse me, sorry about that. So scrolling down a little bit farther, you can see where if I did have some document that I had an electronic copy I wanted to associate with the member record, I could attach just by doing file and choose file. I'm going to hold off on that. And instead, oops, excuse me, I'm going to just submit this. Now, somewhere out there, Pawn's getting an email letting her know that she's got a case that is marked action needed. And if she goes back to her home page, she's going to see a red circle with a number 1 under action needed. And if I go to my cases, I'm going to see the case that I created for Pawn moments ago in an action needed status, but assigned to Pawn. Here, probably within the next couple of minutes, there's a real good chance I'm going to have an action needed case back from Pawn as she bounces that back and says, you are not my top priority. Okay, but we tease. That's cases, and they are tremendously valuable. They're valuable because you can bounce them back and forth between people as you're working on a project together so that nothing falls through the cracks. And everything that's action needed shows up on your administrator homepage, as well as items that you've created that you've assigned to someone else. That shows up here in this briefcase. Super valuable, and most especially because it becomes part of the member record. So anytime any administrator who has access to that employee checks out the cases, they're going to have access to that as well, and nothing gets lost because it's in a file cabinet or in a personal email, etc., or in somebody's memory. It's in the system and it's available where it's supposed to be. Pon, I need another
Yes.
drink. Jump in here and tell what I missed.
Yeah, so Dave was right. I didn't want that work, so I did assign it back to him. And so soon he would get an email back, but if he refreshes,
There we go.
he will see the action needed, and it's going to send back to him because
Oh
he
dear.
wants the work. So yeah, so you will get, the great thing about it is you will get the email
There you go.
notification, and obviously the notes that are assigned to it. And this is,
Mhm.
as Dave mentioned, very key, because it's obviously a lot of protected health information within the system. You don't want emails floating around with that. So you do want to make sure that this is protected.
Mhm.
And then as well as being able to have somewhat of a workflow tool, because maybe Dave was the one that actually received the documentation and he was passing it along to me because I'm the one that's actually processing it. So there's just a
Right.
lot of ways to do it without actually physically touching those
Right.
documents. So, in the world that we live in today, we kind of need that, right? We're more or less, everybody's online and doing things online. And so this is the best way to do it without having to wait to actually physically hand something to someone.
Yeah, fantastic. All of it behind the firewall. Nothing going by email. This is fantastic. Secure, like your employees expect, like all of us want our data handled. Okay, on the home page, you've seen the Activity and Message Center. I want to highlight for you a couple resources. Now, I touched on these in the overview initially, but we're getting them built out. So you're going to be able to see, for example, here, Guide to Assisting Employees Loading Documentation. We've got a fantastic guide out here. Now, not all of the tabs have everything yet, but this one's out. And this is the kind of great information you're going to get. You're able to see a step-by-step instruction with screen captures on assisting employees and uploading documents. That one's already posted out here. As time goes on, we're going to get more of these populated with great information. Again, that's at the bottom of the home page. And then notice the 4 tabs across the top, including panic button, urgent information, what do I do? Great instructions here. And then over on the right side, we're building out the Q&A. This is based on real questions and answers that we've got through these sessions and other sources, where we're building out questions we've been asked and the appropriate answers that we've given. Ton of great information here. In fact, as you get access to the system and you have a moment, it's a good idea to just skim through these and review them in advance, because they have some answers to questions you may not have thought to ask yet. So really valuable information. The last thing that I want to show you in our time together, I want to talk about reports, and I want to show you 2 of the reports that get run the most by administrators working in Benefitsolver. Now, within standard reports, we've got over 100 standard reports, and because it is a rules-based system and your rights are built into the system, you can run these reports and you will only see the things you're supposed to see, which should be very liberating, because it means you can run these reports. You don't have to worry that you're going to get into something you're not supposed to see. The rules are already built and will be in effect, so you're fine. I'm going to show you the 2 most common reports that people really enjoy running, but you can get in here and explore and you won't hurt anything. The 2 I want to show you are the Employee Census Benefit Report and the Employee Dependent Census Benefit Report. I'm going to show you how to run them and highlight what's cool about them. First, I want to show you how to get to them. I went to the reports menu item at the top, and there's a link here for what we call the ECB, or Employee Census Benefit, and the EDCB, or Employee Dependent Census Benefit. When I click those, it's going to take me to the Standard Reports tab with this report highlighted. I can also get to the Standard Reports tab over here, which is how I normally go in. Normally, I click on Standard Reports, and then I select the employee census. This is one time where I actually do type it in. Employee census benefit. If I didn't want to do that extra step, I could just do this. It takes me to the standard reports with that already selected. So I said how crazy we are about saving clicks. I saved myself about 2 clicks by going to reports, employee census benefit. Same thing for employee dependent census benefit. It takes you to this page with it already selected. All right, let's talk about how to run these reports. If I want, once I've selected employee census benefit, I can come down to the bottom, click generate report, boom. That's going to send the report off to the dashboard. It's literally that easy. But maybe you want to narrow it down a little bit. So you can click on the advanced hyperlink, because the standard report includes some around 100 columns. If you open this up in a spreadsheet, it's going to be really, really wide. And if you say, you know what, I don't really want 100 columns worth, you can come in and choose which columns you would like. If you choose name, SSN, structure group, and employment status, and maybe choose medical as your election, and just submit those, you're going to get back a much more manageable report. And in here, again, I have access to just all the structure groups, all of the employer groups and employee types. But if you had access to a subset of these, or excuse me, you will have access to a subset of these. You will have access to only the structure groups that are appropriate for you to have access to. So you might assign them all down because they're all the ones that you're interested in. For me, that's way too many. I'm just going to pick a subset of them. And then scrolling down, I don't need dates. I don't need to change this. I can just click generate report. That takes me over to the report's dashboard. Here's the report I just created. It's in a queued status. Now, if you're impatient like me, you can just click on the dashboard tab and it will refresh the page. And what you'll see is that it will go to a running status and then a completed status. And when it's completed, I'll get an email letting me know that my report is ready for review. See if we time it right. Typically, a report like this will take up to a minute. If it's a really big report with a lot of data, it might take 2 minutes, maybe slightly longer. That's unusual. In any case, we'll let that bake for a second because I want to show you the other report. This was the employee dependent census benefit report, and it's going to look real similar. Again, I can choose the advanced hyperlink. If I don't want 100+ columns, I can just say, you know what, show me member name, dependent name, SSN, show me the structure group and the employment status and the medical election. I'll click submit. Again, I don't need every structure group that I have access to. I'll scroll down to the monthlies and select from here down, pick up those. Moving them to the lower window, these are the ones that are going to get the report on. I don't need from and to dates. I can leave that. Just click generate report. Oh, my phone just buzzed, letting me know I got my email, letting me know this one's complete. And this one will take just a moment. Now, I went ahead in advance and ran a couple of these reports, and I have them open here on my desktop. I want to show you what you get with these 2 reports. First, let's talk about the employee census benefit report. When you run the ECB or employee census benefit report, you're getting a report back that has 1 row for each employee who has a benefit in the system. In this case, I had asked to show me the medical elections. Oh, just got the other email. My other report's done. So here I've got 2 employees in this test group that I ran. And you're seeing just the information that I had asked for, the name, the SSN, their status, structure group. And then because I had chosen the medical election, I'm getting a handful of columns back, 7 columns back with medical election information. Think about the applications for this. We talk about complete transparency of the data. You can run the ECB report, and you can, if you want, run it, show me everything. It'll give you 100 columns wide of every employee who has an election in the system. And you could use the Excel filter tools to sort it down and say, who's enrolled in this plan, who's enrolled in that plan. and during annual enrollment, you can run with include future elections. So you could also filter based on the future elections that each employee has made during annual enrollment. The EDCB, the Employee Dependent Census benefit, is just slightly different. Notice that for this employee, I've got 2 rows. The row for the employee themselves, and then also, in this case, for the spouse, I believe, for Ryan Clooney and for Emily ZZ Test. Excuse me. So for each dependent, you'll also have a row in the spreadsheet. The ECB is just 1 row per employee. The EDCB is 1 row per covered person, including the employee, and 1 row for each dependent under the employee. Also tremendously valuable if you're doing assessments of how many people do we have enrolled in our benefits, and you want to know dependent information included in that report. Okay, that was pretty good. Wow, we are really up against it on time. You can schedule reports, but Pawn, I don't know that I left you time to tell them about how to schedule reports by saving the profile and scheduling. You might have to jump back in and help me wrap it up.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so obviously we can schedule reports, as Dave mentioned, in which we can put documentation out there for that.
Right.
So we won't go that into depth. We just want to make sure we have enough time to close out. I know Kendra's been good about going ahead and responding back to any questions that you may have in the chat, but want to give an opportunity if there's anything that Kendra that was asked that we want to make sure we cover in this session before it closes out.
Thanks, guys. I think you guys did a great job because the questions, I think you answered most of them. I think just a couple of things that came in that were recurring questions. So we are converting in elections and converting in dependents. So employees will not need to re-enter that dependent information. Also, if your dependents or if your employees have already verified their dependents, they're not going to need to re-verify their dependents coming into our system, right? They'll only need to recertify those if you are adding brand new dependents to the system. That was the bulk of the questions. I think I got the rest answered via the chat. So I think we are good to go today, guys.
Wow. Nice job. Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, Pawn. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, State of New Jersey. It's good to see you all again.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.